Welcome to the Aligned Powerhouse, the podcast for executive women who are done leading from burnout and ready to rise from alignment. I'm your host, Dr. Brittany McGeehan, licensed psychologist, high performance and mindset coach, and guide for high achieving women who are ready to lead, live, and love without abandoning themselves. Here, we unpack the nervous system truths, mindset shifts, and emotional patterns that drive your leadership so you can build power from the inside out. Let's get into it. Alrighty, guys, good morning. So today we are talking about the fifth myth in this 5-part series, which is where I am debunking the top 5 myths that I hear from high performers. So today what we are talking about is something I hear all the time, and that is high performing women saying perfectionism is just who I am. So today I want to talk about why this is not only not true, but also why this becomes very problematic as you continue to be this woman who is excelling in her career, building this tremendously successful business while also not wanting to sacrifice her personal life and continue on her healing journey, all of the things, right? So first and foremost, let's name this for what it is. Okay, perfectionism, which is different than having high standards. Okay, perfectionism is a trauma response. Perfectionism is a form of manipulating the way that people see you in order to get them to think of you in a certain way, right? There's a piece of me that's uncomfortable in saying that, but that's the reality of what it is. It's putting on a mask, it's putting on a show so that the people around you hold you in a certain regard because you believe that is what they need in order to accept you, right? It is a mask. It is a trauma response. It is a form of protection. And at its core, it's a form of manipulation. This is very different than simply having high standards, okay? So a few ways to distinguish the two. High standards means that you enjoy excelling. You like nice things is how I usually phrase it, right? Like you want things to be done well. You want them to be done effectively. Perfectionism attaches a lens of fear to that, right? Perfectionism is really at its core, it's all about inherited shame that we have soaked up from one of our caregivers because they were not able to love themselves as they were. But perfectionism says, if I do not do this without flaw, then I am flawed. If I don't get this project done, if I do not show up to be the perfect mother with no mistakes, then there is something wrong with me. So it really encompasses this threat to self that is debilitating for the brain to be able to engage with. This is a lot of where we will see this idea of analysis paralysis. It is where we will see unconscious emotional numbing out, right? Because shame is a really challenging emotion to be able to regulate through, especially if it is toxic shame, right? Healthy shame says, I stepped on your foot. I am so sorry. Let me move off of your foot. Let me see if you are okay, see if there's anything that I can do to make this better. And this is part of being human. That's going to happen, but it doesn't mean anything about me, right? Toxic shame says, I am a horrible person because I have made this mistake. There's something wrong with me. So first and foremost, those are the differences between perfectionism and having high standards, okay? Now, here's where this sort of breaks down. Like this is the direct result of growing up in a childhood where you were held to unrealistic standards, okay? So over and over again, maybe you had a B plus or maybe you had an A, and the parent is saying, well, why didn't you get an A plus? Right? You could have done better. So you're inheriting this idea that you should be perfect in order to receive care and love. So it's really pretty insidious in the way that it affects your relationships. Okay. Because now you are walking into every relationship because at our core, until you've done the work of individuation, until you've done the work of making the unconscious conscious, psychologically, we are all walking around as emotionally young people who are enacting their relationships with mom and dad on the people around us, right? Until you've done that work, like that is absolutely what is happening. And what this does is it doesn't allow us to actually engage in healthy intimacy Because if you have to perform, if you have to show up and be perfect and have your game face on, just like you do at work, just like you do in your business, this creates tremendous issue because you're perpetuating this belief, okay? And here's where it gets even more problematic. So this actually lights up that limbic system in your brain, which is the survival part of our system. And so then you're operating in relationships from a survival place, right? It's not possible to be in that place and be regulated and be building healthy, beautiful, mutually reciprocal relationships, okay? And then to add on to all of this, I hear women who say, I'm just a perfectionist. It's just who I am, right? Now, when you do that, you are lighting up another structure in your brain called the reticular activating system. Now, if you have ever heard in the world of growth, of self-healing, of all of these things, right? You've heard people say, like, I can manifest my reality, right? Like, I think that's like a big thing that goes on. There is an amount of woo to that. There's an amount of, like, listen to the stars, listen to the moon, and I'm very into the woo. I love it, right? I think it's so much fun. But there's also an element of science behind that. There's an element of like, no, this is actually just how our brains are structured. When you hold a belief, so I am fill in the blank, I want you to imagine that you are loading that software into your brain and it is now affecting how you see everything. Okay? I'm going to give you an example. If you've ever been someone who wanted something, so pre-children, I wanted I really wanted a charcoal Toyota 4Runner. Okay. And then I saw like the back seat and the trunk space and I had kids and I was like, that is not for me. But at that time, I really, really wanted one. Now, when I was in this space, I was seeing them everywhere. I felt like everyone had a charcoal 4Runner. I was like, oh my gosh. And when I went and looked at the numbers, it's not that Toyota was selling any more of that model of car in that color. It was simply that my software was primed to make sense of my reality, to attend to that stimuli more frequently. So guys, whenever we talk about that mind-body connection, the nervous system's role in all of this, right? At its core, the nervous system's job is to interpret incoming stimuli and make sense of it as it pertains to us. So we are turning that incoming stimuli, and when I say that, I mean the things we see, the things we smell, the things we hear, the things we're touching, right? Like we have to make sense of all of this. Now, our brains are like, they're phenomenal. They're brilliantly created in that they know how to sift through what's important and what's not. Here is the kicker, is that you are in charge of deciding what is important and what's not. And that is done through the reticular activating system, which the software that's going into that, right, is our belief systems. So if you are someone who believes I'm just a perfectionist, or if you are someone who just believes maybe I am depressed, I am struggling, I am high performing, I am high strung, I am fill in the blank. I always tell my clients, be so mindful of what you are telling yourself, because it's not just about like speaking kinder to yourself, although that is the absolute fastest way to evoke behavioral change. But this is also about you are like beating that into your brain, and then you are deciding how you are going to make sense of the environment around you. Now, when given the chance, right, would you rather believe something that is a little bit more dynamic, meaning it can move, there's some flexibility, right? Such as, I have high standards. I enjoy doing well. Versus something that is an attribute, that is speaking about who you are and is actually writing and programming deeper a trauma response, right? Which is, I am a perfectionist. Now, a phrase I hear that I think is a little bit more dynamic is, I am a perfectionist in recovery, right? Or I am working on this. But I think, and I have seen that there can be a badge of honor that comes with it for women, right? These high performing women who are used to doing well. It's almost as though the stress, the high strungness, the I can do it better than anyone else, it's worn as a badge of honor. And when you do that, guys, you are perpetuating that pattern. You are writing it deeper into your system, and you're making it that much more challenging to have any movement forward. When in reality, you don't have to be stuck on this attribute. We do not have to fuse this with our personality. right? You can actually loosen just a little bit. And that tends to be the first step, is the identity work that really goes with this, right? So my question is always, okay, if you're not a perfectionist, who are you? Because typically high-performing women have not done that underlying work to really get curious about, if I'm not getting my worth, if I'm not seen as being enough, if I don't belong to the group for what I am contributing, for the way that I am pushing the marker forward, for the way that I am excelling, then what am I known for? What worth am I contributing, right? Where is my sense of identity actually lying? Usually there's not an answer for that. And that truly is the first step. If you don't have any idea of where you are going and you are being asked to cross a bridge into the fog, why? Why would you, right? So this is truly what I talk about whenever I am teaching clients to dig deep into the lens that I call the powerhouse paradox, which is the idea that women who are high performing, sitting at the top of their game, driving these incredible businesses, are also enacting trauma patterns, right? They are in a state of survival. That cannot coexist with healthy creation, with healthy creativity and clarity. There needs to be an integration process that takes part. So what I want to leave you with, this 5-part series, and one of the most incredible exercises that my clients can engage in, is asking yourself, okay, if I were to go and ask this younger version of myself, this version who learned the perfectionism, who learned to push themselves harder, who was always told you can do better, or who wasn't given attention in the first place unless they had met a certain criteria. I want you to literally get a picture of her out. So it could be anywhere from like 5 to 8 years old. I want you to pull that out. And I want you to ask her, right? Who are you? Because I guarantee she has a part of this answer for you. Because people usually short circuit whenever I ask them to go do a little bit of identity work and like, who are you if you're not your career? But there's a version of you who already has that answer. And it is also a piece of you that is directly connected to a healthier circuit in your brain and is going to be able to bring the entire brain online versus staying stuck in that limbic system. So if this was helpful, I want you to let me know in the comments. And guys, if you have enjoyed this series, if this has been impactful for you, I want you to go and subscribe to my podcast that is coming out on Monday. I'm so excited. We are talking about the rescuer reflex. We are talking about how to actually receive love as a high-performing woman. We are debunking and like moving through the powerhouse paradox. Like I'm thrilled. I'm so excited. It's going to be so much fun. Again, that podcast is called the Aligned Powerhouse Podcast. I will leave a link in the comments. And thank y'all so much for being here. Alrighty, friend, that is all for today's episode of the Aligned Powerhouse Podcast. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. And do me a favor, if this episode resonated, I want you to share it with another powerhouse woman in your life who is ready to lead and love from a place of self-trust. And don't forget to follow, subscribe, and leave a quick rating or review. It really does help more women find this work. New episodes drop every week. Until then, lead with self-trust and let yourself be seen.